No, Your Honor.
What's the defense plan? Have y'all decided what you're doing?
We're going to need to figure that out before the jury comes in because this changes things for us.
Has your client decided whether she's testifying or not?
One second, Your Honor.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I met with Ms. Magbanua last night and spoke with her, and she is going to be testifying this morning.
She what?
She will be testifying.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about a plan on scheduling. What is the state thinking you'll have rebuttal?
Yes, sir. So far, we know of one rebuttal witness.
Right. Make sure you have them available. I don't want to delay.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Sanganet?
So, my concern, give me a second, let me conclude. Judge, with the court's permission, before Ms. Magbanua testifies, I have to do a little bit of research. I may address Mr. Garcia's position with regards to a renewed motion set.
Try to deal with it when it comes. You'll certainly be heard at the appropriate time. But let's talk about scheduling. How would y'all propose we proceed from here? I assume we're going to finish the testimony maybe early afternoon today. How would y'all propose we proceed?
My proposal would be to close this afternoon, let the jury go home, and then hold deliberations in the morning.
I'll defer to the court, Judge. Obviously, if we're late in the afternoon, based on how long it is, I don't know how long the court's going to keep the jurors. So I'll defer to the court.
Your Honor, I have never been giving a jury closing argument, then basically sending them home. What I would ask is that we're allowed to close tomorrow. I think that it could be more concise and that it wouldn't take up 2 hours of time if it's done more or less on the fly today after testimony. I also stand in a different position because I would be going third. The state would go, let's say they go an hour and a half. Co-defendant counsel goes about an hour and a half. I don't want to be closing at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to a jury who already appears to be very, very tired. I would want them to be attentive. I also have the additional concern that there may be somebody who's observing Yom Kippur today, and they are not eating, and they're fasting today, and I think that would decrease their level of attention. I just don't want to be closing at 5 o'clock at night on a massive case like this, Your Honor.
Let's talk about deliberations. The state and Mr. Garcia have a right to request that the jury be sequestered if deliberations are not concluded. Let's assume we start. I mean, sound like jury deliberation will be tomorrow, regardless. What's your position, Mr. Sanganet, on whether you're going to insist on the jury being sequestered overnight if they don't reach a verdict tomorrow?
Give me just 1 second.
Sure.
Mr. Garcia will not be asking for sequestration. during deliberation.
About the state.
I'm not requesting it, Judge, I'll
Okay.
defer to your
But we
honor.
need to, under the rule, he has entitlement, so, if he's not seeking it, we'll need a waiver from him. Have you had a chance to explain that to him, Mr. Sangadan?
I have not, Judge. I have not.
I'll give you a minute, to do that. Rule 3.370 says during deliberations, unless sequestration is waived by the state, the defendant in all capital cases in which the death penalty is sought by the state, basically jurors have to be sequestered once they start deliberations. I'll give you a few minutes to talk to him about that. It would frankly simplify things if we don't have to sequester them, but if we do, we need to make prior arrangements to do that. I'll give you some time to talk with him. Anything else from either side?
No, sir.
Unless, other than this issue, Judge.
Okay. Well, let's reconvene at 9 o'clock. We'll get Mr. Garcia's position on that, and then we'll start with the jury.
Yes,
All right?
All right, come to order. Court back in session.
Be seated, please. Everybody be seated. Do you have a chance to talk to Mr. Garcia, Mr. Sangadan?
Yes, Judge. After reviewing 3.370 subsection C, having that discussion, Mr. Garcia is requesting sequestration on the verdict that jury getting the code.
All right. So, we've been working on arrangements. Sheriff's Department was hoping they didn't have to do that, but they've been working on arrangements, so we'll be prepared to do so. Yes, Ms. Norris, did something?
Yes, sir. In light of the defendant's intention to testify, Ms. Magbanua, in this case, the state is requesting that Sergeant Christopher Corbett be allowed to be present in the courtroom during her testimony pursuant to the statute 90.616. If a witness whose presence is shown by the party to be essential to the presentation of our case, they can be excused from the rule. The case law states especially if there's no prejudice to the defense. In this case, Ms. Magbanua, if she's testifying, may give various dates, times, locations regarding her activities over a significant length of time, particularly June and July of 2014. If Sergeant Corbett's able to hear those exact dates, times, locations that I might not be able to effectively keep track of, he would be able to then look at the data and determine if there's anything he could use to rebut that testimony. His testimony would be limited to the records. He can't change the records. They are what they are. So I don't think his presence would be prejudicial to the defense in this case, and we think that would be essential to rebut any potential testimony by Ms. Magbanua.
Magbanua.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Ms. Magbanua is not an expert. I will not be offering her as an expert. That is, my understanding of that rule is to allow, that's why we had no problem with him sitting in when, Mr. Swayze testifies, because he can then opine or give his expert testimony based on another expert. Him sitting in on Ms. Magbanua is completely inappropriate. If the state wants to attack dates or times that we bring out, they can tell him which dates there are.
I agree. I'm not gonna allow it. No. Anything else?
Yes, sir. No, sir.
All right. We ready for a jury?
Yes,
You have your witness in the courtroom.
yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's have a jury, please.
All rise for the jury.
Everybody be seated, please. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Katherine Magbanua to the stand.
All right. You would face the clerk and be sworn, please, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Have a seat and slide up the microphone, please, ma'am. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Magbanua.
Good morning.
Hey, I'm going to ask that if, you can get closer to the microphone. If at any point I feel like you might be too low, the court might instruct you just to speak a little louder. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the court reporter?
Good morning. My name is Katherine Magbanua, Katherine. Magbanua, Magbanua.
Now, Ms. Magbanua, before you took the stand today,
Yes, ma'am.
you and I had a discussion. You understand that you do not have to testify today.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it completely your decision to take the stand today?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, hold.
Overruled.
Okay. Now, how are you feeling?
Nervous?
Okay. Now, if I'm going too fast, just let me know, and I'll try and slow down, all right?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to take you back right now. Well, let's ask the most important question. Did you have anything to do with the murder of Dan Markel?
No, ma'am.
Did you get the father of your children, Mr. Garcia, to commit a murder on behalf of Mr. Charlie Adelson?
No, ma'am.
Now I'm going to take you all the way back, not too far back,
Okay.
but to around the area of 2013,
Yes, ma'am.
okay? Now, when is the first time that you met Charlie Adelson?
I was working at a dental office in South Beach, and it was Sophie Dental.
Okay, now what does Sophie stand for?
South of 5th, I believe?
Okay, and that would be on Miami Beach, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at that time in 2013, what were you doing at Sophie Dental? What was your job description?
I was working in front desk, receptionist, and like insurance verification, like clerical work for the office.
Yeah, okay. It didn't require you to have any specialized knowledge in dentistry?
No, ma'am.
All right. Did Charles Adelson work at Sophie Dental?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, was he an employee of Sophie Dental, or was he like a subcontractor?
A subcontractor. He was a specialist.
Now, explain what that, how it is that he works with Sophie Dental being a specialist.
We have a periodontist, and we would just schedule him out whenever there's patients that needed to be seen by a specialist.
That whoever needed his specialized services?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you said what kind of dentist was he?
A periodontist.
Do you remember the first time you actually met?
Not to my knowledge, no. Like, he walked into the office, but the girls just told me he's one of the specialists.
Okay. Now, how is it that you two started to communicate outside of the work arena?
I believe, he was asking a couple of the girls, if I was single, and then he took down my number, or I think he put his number on my phone. I told him I already have your phone number because the doctors tell us to, text to see if, they can call the office and then schedule out patients for them, or whatever their schedule is,
Okay. And so,
or availability.
at this time, are you broken up with Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you living with him?
No, ma'am.
You've already kicked him out of the house.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, moving over to Mr. Garcia. How long have you known Mr. Garcia?
A little over 15 years.
How did you meet Mr. Garcia?
Through mutual friends, like we just hung out one day. I don't remember. It's so long ago. I was young.
Did you guys meet in high school?
No, it was after high school.
You didn't go to the same high school as Mr. Garcia?
No.
Okay.
No.
Now, were you a teenager when you started dating?
Yeah, I was 18, 19, I believe.
Okay. Do you have any children?
Yes, ma'am.
How many children do you have?
2.
Okay. How old are they now?
They're 12 and 7.
Your son is 12?
Yes, ma'am.
And your daughter is 7.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Mr. Garcia the father of both of your children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you go to college?
Yes, ma'am.
What college did you go to?
University of Central Florida.
Where is that located?
That's in Orlando.
Did you get your degree?
Yes, ma'am.
What degree did you get?
In Health Services Administration.
Now, while you were in college, is that when you became pregnant with Ethan?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Mr. Garcia living with you in Orlando?
Yes. By that time, he moved up, I believe, yeah.
To be with you?
Yes, ma'am.
And the baby?
Yes, ma'am.
And after you graduated, did you remain in Orlando?
I believe only for like a couple months, but I went back down to Miami because I needed to start working and he needed a babysitter for my son.
Now, how would you describe your relationship with Mr. Garcia at the time that you were living in Orlando?
It was great.
Okay. No problems at that time?
No problems.
Okay. So you moved back to Miami.
Yes.
What family do you have that lives in Miami?
My mom and my dad and one of my brothers was still living down there.
And when you moved back, were you living with your mom or where was she living?
When I moved back down, I believe I stayed a little bit with Sigfredo's sister.
Okay.
While he was taking care of stuff in Orlando until he moved back down, and I lived in the apartment.
And do you remember where that apartment was in 2013?
Around the same area, like North Bay Village.
And that's in Miami-Dade, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you and Mr. Garcia get married?
No, ma'am.
Do you consider him your husband?
Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't you get married to Mr. Garcia? Why didn't you guys get married?
I mean, we've been dating for such a long time, so when I think initially we were going to finally get married, that's when things kind of started getting bad.
Now, when you say things started getting bad, are you talking about your relationship with Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by things were getting bad?
No, we were just fighting a lot and just normal boyfriend-girlfriend stuff, I guess.
Were there any specific issues you were having with Mr. Garcia?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I went through his phone one day and it's like I just started seeing stuff that I wasn't happy about.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that you found other women's contact information in his phone?
Objection, Judge.
Overruled.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you have a suspicion he was cheating on you?
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, objection. Can we come sidebar, Your Honor?
Yeah, we can go sidebar. Proceed.
Now, we talked about, when things started to become rocky with your relationship with Mr. Garcia, okay? When did you and Mr. Garcia officially have a big breakup?
Like when, as in, like the year?
So, let me do this. Was it fair to say you guys were constantly breaking up and getting back together?
Yes.
In 2013, when you met Charlie Adelson, you and him had broken up officially.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's the first time you actually kicked him out of your house or
Yes,
your
ma'am.
home.
Yes.
In 2013, when did that breakup happen in relation to you working at Sophie Dental? So we can just have a general idea of when that happened.
I believe like towards the end of the year.
Let me ask you this. When was Kaylee born? When was her birthday?
May
May
30th,
Okay, May 30th of what year?
2012.
All right. When Kaylee was born, were you and Mr. Garcia still together?
Yes, ma'am.
When she had her first birthday, were you still together?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But you know you broke up with him before you met Charlie Adelson in late 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You can't give me a specific date.
No.
Did a specific incident occur that caused you to break up with him?
I believe so, yeah. There was like a phone call where his phone kind of called me by accident. I kind of overheard him talking about something to one of his friends, about a girl maybe, and I was done.
And when you were done, he was living with you at the time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Who else was living in your home?
My mom.
Okay. And so after you was kicked out, it's just you, your mom, and your kids?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Was this a serious separation?
Yes. At this time, yes.
Did Mr. Garcia try to get back together with you?
Yes.
How did he do that?
I mean, I've been with him forever, so, like he'd say the right things and we try to work it out again.
But you never, in this time when you began dating Mr. Adelson, you never...
No, never got back together.
Okay. How did you get the job at Sophie Dental?
I believe one of my high school friends was working there, but she couldn't take the hours, so she told me, oh, you do great in this office. So I applied and got the job there.
All right. And at that time, what other jobs were you doing? Was it just Sophie Dental?
I believe I was doing like promotions. Like,
Now, promotions.
Yes.
You seen a picture of you at a bar.
Yes.
Was that the promotions job?
An event. One of them, yes.
Describe for the jury what this promotions entailed.
Okay, I worked for a certain liquor company, and then we'd go and we'd kind of give samples in liquor stores and just kind of get feedback from the customers on like what they think about the product.
And then what is your incentive to do this? Are you paid?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you paid?
We would get tips, like if we did it like at a certain liquor store and that like owner would be, would allow us to get some type of tips for giving out the drinks. And also like, I think at that time, the company gave me checks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think it could be checks, but you know for certain you were getting cash?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do you remember how much you would average make at these promotions?
Not at that time, no.
Was it ever something that was stable or it's something that fluctuated?
It fluctuated.
All right. Now, when Mr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson, started calling you, was it clear to you that he wanted something more than a friendship?
Yes.
Did he make that clear to you?
I mean, I assumed.
Okay. And by that I mean he didn't beat around the bush about his intentions of dating.
No.
Was he pretty upfront about his attraction to you?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in the beginning, did you immediately start dating him?
No.
Did this progress over time?
Well, it's hard to like have two children, and my daughter was really, both of them were really small at that time, so I don't have that luxury to just go out whenever I can.
But you did eventually have a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship?
Yes.
All right. Do you remember what your first official date was with him? So I'm gonna try and move a little forward to another big event
Okay.
to see if we can, plot some times. New Year's Eve is normally a big event for people.
Yes, ma'am.
So this New Year's Eve in 2013, were you dating Charlie at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So did you guys go out together?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember what you did on that New Year's Eve, like where you went?
I think we celebrated it like in Hard Rock Cafe and Casino. Like there's some clubs there, and like we just went with a couple friends.
The one in Fort Lauderdale?
Yes.
The one that, oh, wait, you don't know
Mhm.
that yet. Okay. And it's a Hard Rock Hotel and Casino?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. How often would you say you and Mr. Adelson were communicating around this time?
Daily.
Dating. In what ways would you communicate, if you could describe for the jury?
Through phone.
And what mediums would you use? Would it only be calls, FaceTime, WhatsApp? What do you remember using to call him? Text messages
Yeah, text messaging and regular phone calls.
and just regular phone calls? Now, did you ever consider yourselves boyfriend and girlfriend?
And we never put that, that label, like boyfriend, girlfriend, but yeah, I guess. I mean, we were hanging out a lot.
And when you guys would talk to each other, you'd call each other baby.
Yeah,
Would you say things like, if you end a conversation, you'd say, I love you?
yeah.
But in terms of it being a serious relationship, were you ever looking for him to move in with you?
No,
Was there ever any discussion about that?
no,
Was there any discussion ever about marriage?
no.
And how busy was Charlie Adelson at this time in terms of working?
I think he's always busy. I think he's always, he has a lot of patients, like all over Miami-Dade and Broward.
Okay.
And
then
even up further up. I don't know how far his patients go.
But he travels
Up and down, yeah.
all through Dade, West Palm,
Yes.
all those counties to do his specialty, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you see each other every day?
At that time?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
But you did talk every day.
Yes.
How would you describe Mr. Charlie Adelson's in terms of how much he talks?
A lot.
Okay. You were listening to some of the phone calls that were played in court, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And some of those are a fair and accurate representation of
How he talks.
conversations that you guys have.
Yes, ma'am.
Seems like he goes off on a tangent sometimes.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, were you in a sexual relationship with Mr. Adelson?
Yes, ma'am.
But you were not exclusive with him?
No, ma'am.
Now, I know this is going to be a little uncomfortable. Were you still having a sexual relationship with Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
How often?
Whenever we would kind of get back together, I guess.
Was it as frequent as how much you were having sex with Mr. Adelson at that time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Describe your relationship with Mr. Garcia at the time that you're dating Charlie.
He was just always kind of in and out. He was around because of the kids, but he'd be in and out of my life.
Okay. Did you talk to him or try to talk to him almost every day?
I believe so,
And why was that?
because of the kids.
All right. And did you also communicate with him through text messages and phone calls?
Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Garcia know about your relationship with Mr. Adelson?
Yeah,
Okay. Did Mr. Adelson know about your relationship with Mr. Garcia?
yes,
Did Mr. Adelson always support or encourage you to get back together with Mr. Garcia?
yes,
Did he always say, that's the father of your kids?
yeah,
Did you feel that was also a reminder to you that this wasn't anything serious with Mr. Adelson?
with the way he always says that, yeah.
Always
That's why I just knew it wasn't something serious, it wasn't gonna be forever.
Now, would there be times around that time that you wouldn't be able to find Mr. Garcia?
Yes,
Was that normal that he would be missing for days at a time?
yes, ma'am.
When that happened and you needed to get in touch with him, would you constantly text and call his phone?
Yes, in terms of blowing up his phone, yes.
Okay, I didn't want, but that's the term, you were blowing up his phone.
Yes,
If you needed something from him, you weren't shy about continuously trying to get in touch with him.
yes.
All right. Now I'm going to try to move forward to about March of 2014. Did you ever meet Charlie Adelson's sister, Wendy Adelson?
In March of 2014?
Well, have you ever met her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember where the first time was that you met her?
Yes, ma'am. We ate like a early dinner.
Okay. And was she there with someone else?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You now know who Jeffrey Lacoste is, right?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
And is that the person that she was at the dinner with?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you were there with Mr. Adelson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Was the restaurant that you were eating at, were you sitting outside?
Yes, ma'am.
And this was late afternoon, still daylight?
Yes, ma'am.
You had any indication that Mr. Garcia knew that you were at that restaurant?
No.
Okay.
If you
No.
would answer out loud, it would help this.
No, ma'am. Sorry.
Does it sound like a fair representation that that occurred in March of 2014?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But you wouldn't be able to tell me what exact date that
Yeah,
happened?
I don't remember.
Now, another big day in May is Kaylee's birthday.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So that's May 30th.
Mm-hmm.
This would now be in 2014, so it's her second birthday?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember what you did for Kaylee?
Yeah, I had like a small little birthday party in the apartment.
The apartment you were living at what location?
That was in Treasure Drive.
Treasure Drive.
Yes.
Is that on the beach or is that?
It's like next to the water.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a condominium.
You saw all of the
cell phone.
towers and the maps and where you are on that little island.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what the Treasure Beach Drive location is?
Yeah, that's North Bay Village.
North Bay Village.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. So you did a small cutting of the cake. Did Mr. Garcia show up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so how long did he show up for?
Like an hour, probably. Like it was fairly quick. I can't like put a specific time, but I know he showed up, took a couple pictures, and then left.
Okay. And at this time, you're still dating Mr. Adelson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Around this time, do you remember what car Mr. Garcia was driving?
Not that I can remember.
Do you remember him renting any cars?
Not that I can remember.
Did you take him to go rent a car at Comfort Rental by the airport?
No.
And you testified you didn't have knowledge of Sigfredo's day-to-day, where he was every single day.
Yeah, no.
Would you ask him?
I can't remember at that time. Maybe I did. Like I'd ask him like, "Where have you been?" And then, but that's it. Half the time at that time I don't think I was asking so many questions.
Okay. Because you weren't together.
Yeah, and he probably wouldn't have told me anyways.
Now, I want to talk to you about July 1st of 2014, okay? Do you remember a day when Mr. Garcia confronted you and Mr. Adelson?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about this. Did Mr. Garcia come and pick up the kids from you that day?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What were your plans for that day?
To go out on the jet ski.
Okay. Whose jet ski?
Charlie's.
He owned jet skis.
Yeah.
How many?
He had one.
Just one. Okay. What car was Mr. Adelson driving at the time?
The Lexus.
The Lexus that you were arrested in.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I will get to that. So did Mr. Garcia know that you needed him to watch the kids so that you could go out with Mr. Adelson?
I mean, I probably told him that I had to go out or I had plans.
Would you have told him it was Mr. Adelson?
No.
Why?
Because he didn't like him.
So Mr. Garcia comes and he picks up the kids. And by kids, I mean Ethan and Kaylee.
Yes, ma'am.
What car do you remember him driving at that time?
I believe he had like a Volvo, like a old little bucket car.
Okay. What does that mean, a bucket car?
It's like a cheap car.
Oh, okay.
Like
Do you remember what color or anything like that?
a blue, I think.
So he picks up the kids. Where does he take them, if you know?
He took them to go eat, like around the corner, there's like a pizza place
Mm-hmm.
down the block. I think he took them out to go eat.
Now, after he picks up the kids and leaves, who comes and picks you up?
Charlie.
Okay. And you get in the car with him?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you guys are just going to go and take the jet skis out?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What happens, well, how, you pull out, Mr. Adelson does.
Mhm.
How far does he get away from your apartment?
Probably down like a block.
And then what happens?
Siegfried will cut us off
Okay. In what?
in the car, on the car.
Now, describe for the jury what you mean cut you off. Like, did he, describe for them.
Oh, like we were driving out of our parking lot and then he cut us off like right in front. Like he went around us and cut us off and blocked the street.
Did Mr. Adelson have to slam on his brakes to stop?
Yes.
Were your children in the car with Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Garcia get out of the car?
Yes, ma'am.
What was he doing?
Screaming in the middle of the street
At who?
at us.
Did you guys roll down the windows?
No.
Do you have any idea what he was yelling?
No.
Was he yelling in Spanish or English?
I don't know.
What did Mr. Adelson do?
Well, he was freaking out. He was trying to figure out how he can make a turn to go the other way around with the jet ski like hitched in the back.
Okay, so he didn't get out the car and confront Mr. Garcia?
No.
Okay, he just got out of there.
Yes.
Was he successful in his attempt to get away from Mr. Garcia?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Garcia didn't actually physically attack the car or anything like
No.
that? Okay. Now, who is Yendra?
Like a high school friend. She's younger.
Okay. And you saw Yendra here in court, right?
Yes,
Miss
ma'am.
Mascaro?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you and her are very close friends, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you both working at the clubs together?
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to first talk about Hollywood Live. All right? Where is Hollywood Live?
In Hollywood Ave, I believe.
In Fort Lauderdale?
I believe that's like in the beginning of Fort Lauderdale, yeah.
It's not one of the clubs that is at the Hard Rock.
No, ma'am.
It's a separate establishment.
Mhm.
Okay. How did you get the job at Hollywood Live?
I believe through friends or because I was working in another club before that, and when you work with other girls in bottle service, they kind of like recommend you, like, oh, there's this other club too that you make good money at.
Do you remember what the first club you started working at was?
Fate.
Fate was the first club that you were working at. Okay, so you started working at Fate and then got another job at Hollywood Live.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now you keep saying bottle service. Describe for the jury what bottle service is.
Okay, we have like VIP sections in, the establishment and the club, and basically we have, we service the people in the VIP with the bottles. We take them out with the sparklers, make a big scene, like take pictures, like dance a little bit, I guess, for the customers, and then just make them feel special.
Okay. Now part of your job is how you dress, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It's expected you to dress provocatively
Yes, ma'am.
with probably as little clothes as is allowed
Yes, ma'am.
without you being arrested or anything, right?
Yes.
And that is because that's going to get you more tips, right?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
An average night, because you've heard a lot of testimony about how much money you made. What was a good night for you at the club?
A good night for me. I can walk out of there with $1,000 to $1,500.
Now, let me ask you this. Certain nights are better than other nights, right?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
So what is probably the best night of the week?
A Saturday, or if there's like some artist or somebody that's gonna be performing in the club,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get people that
High roller clients.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And Friday a good day to work too?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
You can
Did
be
you
in the
own-
middle.
Oh,
It can
go
be
ahead.
in the middle of the week. It could be like a Wednesday night.
Especially if someone is making a special appearance at the
Yes,
club.
ma'am.
Was your schedule set every week with specific days, or you could
No.
pick up and drop shifts?
Yeah.
All right. How often would you work? Give me an average, because I know it wasn't the same every week. But would you work sometimes more than 2 nights a week?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And sometimes you would work 1 night a week?
Yeah.
All right.
If we knew that it was gonna be like a slow month,
Mm-hmm.
and if we come in on a Friday and it didn't seem like we're really making much, majority of the time on Saturday, like we'll try to trade off shifts. That's another thing you can do. You can trade off shifts with the girls. Like, can you come in for me? And then, they're very lenient about it.
Okay. And that's how it is in the service industry.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody's picking up each other's shifts.
Mhm.
Now, did you report your cash tips?
No, ma'am.
You didn't report them on any tax returns?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Why not?
Because they were my cash tips. Like, I mean, none of the girls really did it.
Okay, now you understand that you haven't paid taxes on that cash,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Okay. And you do understand that you are supposed
Yes, ma'am.
to report all of your cash so you can pay the federal government, right?
Yes, ma'am.
But you did not.
I did not.
Okay. Would you save up a certain amount of cash and keep it at home?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you deposit everything that you made cash-wise into the bank?
Yes, ma'am.
You did?
I mean, cash-wise, yeah, like I'd save up, and then whenever I get a chance, then I would deposit it.
Okay. So you wouldn't go, for example, like every Friday after a shift or
No.
every Saturday?
No.
Okay. How many bank accounts do you have?
2
How long
or
have you
more.
had? Oh, from which 2 banks do you go to?
To Chase and to Bank of America
How long have you had 2 bank accounts?
since I guess I opened.
Okay.
I mean, since I was probably 16, 17.
Oh, okay, so you've always had 2 separate bank
I
accounts,
believe
right?
so, yeah.
Okay, so there would be bank records dating all the way back.
I believe so. I don't know how far back though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone by the name of Dan Markel? Well, did you back then know someone by the name of Dan Markel?
No, ma'am.
In 2014, you've learned that Wendy Adelson's divorce was already finalized, right?
I learned it here.
In court.
Yes.
Now, when you had that meeting, well, not really a meeting, but when you had the dinner and Miss Adelson showed up with Mr. Lacasse,
Yes, ma'am.
do you remember at that time, was she talking about her divorce?
Not that I can recall.
Did you know at that time that she was married or had been married?
Not that I can recall.
Okay.
I know she probably talked about her kids because that's something, like I talk about my kids and then it kind of makes conversation like, oh, you have kids, and how old are they type. But
No, she never went into any specifics with you about how tumultuous her divorce was?
no,
You ever exchanged phone numbers with Wendy Adelson?
no, ma'am.
You guys didn't talk on the phone?
No, ma'am.
You're not friends with her?
No, ma'am.
All right. You knew her mostly as Charlie Adelson's sister?
Yes.
Now, that time that you had that dinner in March, that's not the only time you guys hung out.
No, ma'am.
There was another time that you hung out with Yindra, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think we established that that was Father's Day of that
Yes,
year.
ma'am.
Does that sound familiar?
Yes, ma'am.
Why, when you heard Father's Day, you started nodding your head like, yes, that's right?
Well, because I saw the picture,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I saw the picture and they said Father's Day, I was like, oh, okay, that's probably why I wasn't with the kids, because Sigfredo had the kids.
Mr. Garcia would have had them on
Yes.
Father's Day.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And what year are we talking about?
2014. Well, as far as you know, they were with him. Could they have been with his mother,
Maybe,
his sister?
maybe.
You didn't
But
check.
it was his, like it was his day.
It's his turn.
Yeah,
Okay.
to have them.
So apart from, did you know, you said she had mentioned her kids.
Mhm.
Did she mention anything about a custody battle or anything like that to you?
No, ma'am.
Did she talk negatively about her ex-husband at all in your presence? Now, I want to talk to you about, you've met Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson,
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Mhm.
Okay. In your presence, did they ever talk about Wendy and her divorce in front of you?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And how did Charlie talk about his sister to you? Charlie Adelson.
He didn't.
He didn't talk about her to you at all?
I mean, he told me he had a sister, he had a brother, but that's about it. Not any details.
You never met the brother, right?
No.
Okay. Did it seem to you that Charlie was very close to his sister?
Yeah, he said he loves his sister.
Okay. What about his relationship with his mother?
Yeah.
Did they talk a lot?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Now I want to turn your attention to July 18th of 2014. You now know that that was an important day in this case.
Yes, ma'am.
You've now learned that that was the day that Dan Markel was executed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Garcia ever tell you that he was leaving town?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember Mr. Garcia ever telling you, I'm going up north, I'm going to Tallahassee?
No, ma'am.
Would Tallahassee have stuck out in your mind?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And apart from being here for the past 3 years, had you ever been to Tallahassee before?
No, ma'am.
Okay. This is your first time here?
First time.
If I asked you right now what you were doing on July 18th of 2014, would you be able to tell me?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember having a conversation with Charlie Adelson about his brother-in-law being in an accident? Does that sound familiar to you?
It sounds familiar, yeah.
Okay, so you do at some point remember him referencing his brother-in-law or ex-brother-in-law?
I believe so, yes.
As best as you can remember, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, try to describe for us what it is that he said to you in terms of referencing his ex-brother-in-law being in an accident.
Well, that was it. Like, I remember, or trying to remember, that there was one day that he had called and he said, yeah, like his brother-in-law got in an accident. I don't know if it was a car accident or an accident.
Okay, do you remember, does car accident, does that sound familiar, or you don't know?
I don't know.
All right. Did he tell you that his brother-in-law had been shot twice?
No, ma'am.
Okay. He didn't tell you he had been murdered?
No, ma'am.
Would you have remembered that if he told you?
I would remember that.
How do you know Luis Rivera?
Through Sigfredo?
Were you ever close with him?
No, ma'am.
You knew how close he was to Mr. Garcia, though?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. But you wouldn't, did you hang out with him if Mr. Garcia wasn't around?
No, ma'am.
Did you talk to him on the phone at all?
No, ma'am.
All right. If you couldn't find Mr. Garcia, would it be a safe assumption that Luis would know where he is?
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't have his number even saved in your phone, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay. You saw the phone records in this case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Your phone records.
Yes, ma'am.
And the prosecution was talking about a call being placed with a number that begins with 934. Do you remember that?
I remember it now because keep seeing it in this
Okay.
trial.
And they make a big deal about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me today or tell the members of the jury who it was that you were trying to call?
With the what? With
that 934 number. Did you even know whose number that is?
I mean, I believe that it wasn't that Lewis's number.
Oh no. Well, I'm asking you. At the time, could you testify today and tell me that that was Lewis's number?
No, ma'am.
It could have been Lewis's
It
number.
could have been.
All right. And would it have been reasonable that you were looking for Sigfredo and you tried to call Lewis's old number? If that was his number.
Yes, ma'am.
That sounds reasonable.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But you can't tell this jury definitively that that's what happened.
Yes, ma'am.
That would show also that you actually didn't know what his current number was.
Yes, ma'am.
You also saw the phone records of July 19th, 2018, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That was up on the board. And you saw the phone records where Luis Rivera called you first.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. On the morning of July 19th.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have an independent recollection of what that conversation was about?
Probably trying to look for Sigfredo.
Okay. So You had been calling Sigfredo all that morning.
Yes, ma'am.
You now know where he was.
Yes, ma'am.
Where was he?
At Shrimp's house.
Who's Shrimp?
The girl that he was talking to.
Stephanie Carmona?
Yes, ma'am.
And she's the exotic dancer?
Yes, ma'am.
And as far as you know at that time, was he living with her?
Yeah, he was living with her.
Did you approve of your children being around?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Was that a point of contention between you and Mr. Garcia?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, it's clear from the records you didn't call him first. He called you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you had testified that, well, I'll just ask you, were you ever trying to deliver money to Luis Rivera and Mr. Garcia at Jessica Rodriguez's house?
No, ma'am.
Was there ever a time that you picked up money from Mr. Adelson's house that was stapled
No, ma'am.
and that you then delivered that to Mr. Garcia
No, ma'am.
or delivered it to Mr. Rivera?
No, ma'am.
You have been to Jessica Rodriguez's house, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is Jessica Rodriguez? Bless you.
Bless you. It's Lewis's baby mama, I guess.
Mother of his kids?
Yeah, mother of his kid.
Okay, they're not married?
No, ma'am.
All right. And you haven't seen her testify throughout this trial, right?
No, ma'am.
All right. Now, you had testified previously that you do not remember what you were doing on July 19th, 2014, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If I were to show you a text message of yours from that day, would that refresh your recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Showing the state what's been pre-marked as Defense Exhibit 36. For the rest of it, I'm also showing counsel Mr. Garcia, the document. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
Thank you. Now, without reading out what you're looking at,
Okay.
take a look at the documentation I'm showing you, which is right here. Do you recognize these phone numbers? Whose phone number is that?
Charlie's.
Okay, and this would be a
I don't
conversation.
think the jury could hear him.
Oh, I'm sorry. Speak up. Whose number, whose conversation is this with?
Charlie?
And
Me?
whose name is that?
Me?
Okay. Now just review the conversation you had and let me know if it refreshes your recollection as to what you did that day.
Okay.
Also take a look at the time. I don't want to confuse.
Okay.
Has your memory been refreshed?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were you that day?
Took Ethan to the pool.
Who is Ethan?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Took Ethan to the pool.
Okay, and do you remember around what time you took Ethan to the pool?
I believe it was at around 11,
Okay,
like in the morning.
is what how your memory was refreshed with the document I provided to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That would indicate to you that you had your kids that day, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You wouldn't be able to tell me if you picked them up that morning or they were with anyone else that night?
No.
Okay. Has there ever been a time when Ninja watched your kids?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, but you wouldn't be able to tell me exactly when that happened?
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury how it is that you started working for the Adelsons?
How I started working?
Yes.
Well, I had asked Charlie for a favor if I could start working for him.
Do you remember when you asked him for that favor?
No, like year-wise,
Date-wise,
probably,
if I were to show you a text message of when you asked him that, would that refresh your recollection?
yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm showing opposing counsel what's been pre-marked as defense exhibit 33. So the opposing counsel is president.
Why don't we do this? We're about due for a break. We'll let the jury step out. Give me 15 minutes. We'll come back to session for a minute here. But be seated, please, since here at 36, which is a significant number beyond what you have in evidence, you must have a number of exhibits. I don't want to spend time stopping here and giving them the document at that point in time. So show counsel all the exhibits you intend to show the witness. We'll take 15 minutes. I'll hear from counsel if they wish to be heard. 15 minutes.